One of the things that's nice about Unity Fellowship is the fact that no matter whether you're white, black, brown, purple, green, gay, straight, bi, trans, you're welcome here. It's just the mindset of everybody here, and Pastor Bob all the way down. Everybody here. It's it's home, and you feel like you're going home. You feel like you're in a big accepting family when you're here.
So what makes Unity Fellowship different from other churches in Owensboro is their focus on making sure that everyone feels welcomed and accepted with no conditions. They're accepting of the LGBTQ plus community, of different people from different backgrounds and cultures, and this is what really led me to joining Unity Fellowship. And I also feel like many churches focus on the individual, but we are actually meant to be in relationship with others. The concept of Ubuntu, that if one person is oppressed, that all people are oppressed. And I feel like Pastor Bob, in his sermons, he really focuses on systemic injustices and oppression, and that God is on the side of the oppressed.
Well, after many years of being out of the church, we came to a point where we were ready to find a church, but I in particular knew that I no longer wanted a part of what I had experienced as a younger person. My soul and spirit had just no longer aligned with what I was being taught about myself. So I left the church for many years, and then as a couple years later, we decided we wanted to return to a church. So I knew part of that had to be a church that was totally accepting and that not just welcome to come to the door, but could fully participate in all regard, should we desire. And so we began to visit churches, and we visited Unity Fellowship a while back, and felt like we had made a discovery in a church home.
And we also like this church because it's a teaching church. Every Sunday we have the opportunity after the service, or even sometimes during it, if we have questions and we're not sure of what he's talking about, or if we have questions as to the sermon that he's preaching, we're allowed to do that. And it's something that I've never had in a church, and it's been very enlightening, and I've learned a lot about myself, and I've learned about a lot of things, actually. And above and beyond anything else, I know that I'm loved. I know that Scott's loved, and I know that we're loved together.
And so it's not just like going to mass at a big church and you just go in, hear the thing, get up and leave. Here you actually are charged with asking yourself, what does it mean? And the membership is small enough we can all interact during the sermon as well as after the sermon. So we can ask each other questions. You learn from other people with their comments or their questions about whatever we're discussing that week or what was discussed the week before or whatever. And unlike a large church where you just know the people from sight, you actually know the people here. Whether they are active in doing something or they're just here every week and they participate in how are you doing and stuff like that, or they tell you how somebody else that they've talked to that you haven't seen is doing. So it's like a very large, it's not just a church family, it's a large family.
Just because you came from a Baptist background or a Pentecostal background or a Catholic background doesn't mean you're not welcome. Unity will surprises a lot of people because everyone is accepted. You will feel comfortable. You won't feel out of place. You won't feel judged. You'll feel like you belong.
Hey folks, this is Pastor Bob coming to you from Unity Fellowship. You may be really sick of church. You may have given up on church a long time ago, and maybe you're not even looking for a place. But I want to invite you to a faith community where you'll be safe, where you can be accepted for who you are. Always, for whoever you are right now on your faith journey. Check us out on Facebook Live. Check us out on Zoom. I think you'll find a place that you're safe, a place that you'll be accepted, a place that you'll feel comfortable.
What makes Unity Fellowship different from other churches in Owensboro is their focus on making sure that everyone feels welcomed and accepted with no conditions. They're accepting of the LGBTQ plus community, of different people from different backgrounds and cultures, and this is what really led me to joining Unity Fellowship. This community, at its heart, is open to everyone, and even if you are on the fence and you might disagree, we are still open to having that dialogue and that discussion that fosters growth and understanding. So I feel like the people who come to Unity Fellowship are so open and loving that even if you didn't agree with something that the church promotes, that you're still able to express that and not be judged.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Unity Fellowship. My name is Chrissy Bray Cotton. I'm ministry intern here, and we are absolutely thrilled to have you with us. Now I'd like to introduce our associate pastor, Reverend Gator Lundberg.
Good morning, everyone. I echo Chrissy's words of welcome. Wishing y'all again a happy Black History Month. You are in a safe space. Bottom line, no condemnation, no judgment, absolute love and affirmation. I want you to believe that whether you're tuning in now in person, virtually, or you tune in later this week or next month, you are loved. Let me introduce our senior pastor, Bob Coons, to offer his welcome.
Good morning and welcome, everyone. Thank you, Chrissy and Gator, for that welcome. I echo everything that you've said. We are absolutely delighted that you are with us, whether you're here in person or you're joining us virtually, whether it's today or some other day. We're glad that you've joined us. Know this, you are a beloved child of God, created in God's very image, just as you are. Love to be. Thank you.
I'm ready. Y'all ready?
I will be.
Okay.
The season of Epiphany is the season of light, and it commemorates the visitation of Magi, as told in Matthew's Gospel. This parabolic story about these mysterious visitors, foreigners, who are drawn by a great light. Not real sure what the feedback's about. Are you working on that?
Do you have some monitors?
No, I do not. No. Anyway, the Magi are drawn by a great light, and it underscores God's love is inclusive and universal. And as John writes in his gospel, the life of Christ brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. Amen.
Throughout the season of Epiphany, we light the Christ candle as a reminder that the light of Christ shines throughout the year, not just at Christmas. In Christ, God's eternal love takes flesh, and the word that spoke light into the world shines in us and through us.
Jesus Christ, light of the world, you are our life and our hope, our peace and our joy, our love made visible. Shine in us and through us until the world is filled with your light and all creation lives in your life. Amen.
Now I'd like to introduce our first video of the day, Our Love Will Change the World by Alice Cooper.
We're only beginning. Our minds are cynical. get used to it. Anyhow, you may not like it now, but you'll get used to it. Anyhow, you'll get used to it. Anyhow, you'll get used to it somehow. Change the world.
Okay, now it's time for news, joys, and concerns. If you're on the app, you can type and I'll read it. If you're on Zoom, you can unmute. If you're in person, you can wave, and Darian over here will bring you a microphone.
Hi, this is Jamie. I want to let you all know we have an event going on for Valentine's Day. I'm going to visit a few nursing homes, and I'm looking for volunteers to hand out Valentines. We're going to do on the 13th, 11 to 11:45, the Hermitage. That afternoon at 3 o'clock, Chautauqua. And on the 14th at 2 o'clock, Hillcrest. If you'd like to let me know if you can make it, you can talk to me afterwards, or you can email ufprojectvalentine@gmail.com. Thanks.
And for those of you who are in the online chat, keep a lookout. Jamie may be having a Valentine making party this Wednesday. I'm sorry? 6 to 7:30. Okay, thank you, Jamie.
Thank you, Jamie, again for spearheading that.
Okay, and I've got a joy. I was supposed to have told it a couple of weeks ago, and I keep forgetting it. But as everybody knows, Miss Carol was a big part of our church, and she loved the church. And so in her estate, she left the church some more money. And we got that money a little bit ago, and it was $35,855.67 that she donated to the church because she loved this church so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've also got a couple of concerns. Miss Betty Miles, who was a longtime member of Zion, passed away, and so be with her family. She was 94. I believe that's right. And then Miss Gay Duggar called me this morning and asked for prayers. She fell in her bedroom and broke her wrist and had to call an ambulance. She's by herself. She's kind of distraught because she can't do anything right now. And so she just asked for prayers.
Definitely, Daniel. Thank you. On the app, Will Overby writes, he wishes everyone a good morning. He says he has a great joy to share. His CT scan went well. Pancreatic tumor is stable, and the lesions on my liver might possibly be dead and are just leftover scars. They're very happy about the results to that. Congratulations, Will. That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. I have a concern to share. I would like us to pray for, especially today, the people of color in our country. The overt racism being shared from the highest office in the nation, whether we know it or not, it filtrates down into the psyches of every little child of color. And it's enraging. Prayer concern for me too. I have been struggling with my anger at the silence of religious leaders and people of goodwill. Their silence and indifference is horrifying. So ask that our prayers comfort those who are directly affected, and that somehow Creator makes uncomfortable the comfortable.
Thank you, Gator.
Chrissy, I've got another prayer request. One of my good friends from the post office, Philip Nesmith, had to make the uncomfortable and the extremely hard decision Thursday to disconnect his wife from life support. She went into a diabetic coma last Saturday and then went into seizures. And so she passed Friday afternoon. And so just be in prayers for him and their kids, because
nobody should have to make that type of decision. And they're only in their 40s, so it's too young.
Absolutely. Thank you, Daniel. Audrey Laster writes that she had a successful first week at her new job. Audrey Laster? Congratulations, Audrey. Anybody else? News, joys, and concerns?
We have a praise that Josh is with us this morning, and that Bob's there in person. I feel left out. Grateful, very grateful that everyone's there and we're listening, looking forward to it today.
Absolutely. And Gator, you know we always want you here.
Oh, I know. Thank you.
News, joys, and concerns. Pastor G, would you like to lead us in prayers this morning?
Sure. Creator, we come to you on a Sunday when many of us are hurting. We're leaking oil in all different parts of our lives. We come seeking hope and renewal. We come to stretch our faith in ways that possibly we didn't even think we could do it. Hear our praises this morning. Understand our gratefulness through the midst of our struggles. Be with those prayer concerns lifted this morning for the brutal decisions that have to be made with a loved one, for the loss that it. We ask that you be with those prayer concerns that went unspoken this morning. Walk with them, certainty and fear, and guide and lead us to each day with more and more and more light in the who came to make all things new. Amen.
Now, if you join me for our affirmation of togetherness. We gather in oneness together. We praise and worship God together. We proclaim God together. We welcome and affirm all persons in God's love together. We seek to live for God in every breath and heartbeat together. Okay, you can join our contact list by texting the word ADD, ADD, to 270-201-5022. It'll send back a form. You don't have to fill the whole thing out if you don't want to, but at least send us back your name so we know who we're messaging. And if you'd like to help support this ministry, you can do so one of several ways. You can, of course, give on the app, click the donate button on our Facebook page, or you can go old school and mail it to P.O. Box 1401, Owensboro, Kentucky 42302. There's also a collection plate at each door to the sanctuary.
Let me interrupt for just a second and remind you that if you are giving on the app, you are encouraged to do so recurrently. So if you would do that. But there are a lot of ways that you can support this ministry. Help us get the word out. Tell people about your church. Invite them to come with you. Interact with us on Facebook. Share posts from Unity Fellowship. Those are all ways that help increase the traffic and reset the algorithm. So help us get the word out. Best kept secret in Owensboro.
You can also get our new app, totally free, by searching for Unity Fellowship-Owensboro on the Google Play or the App Store and looking for our logo. Now for our second video of the day, That's How You Change the World by Newsboys.
That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. All my life I had big dreams to do big things and make a change. And all the while I just passed by the simple needs right here next to me. 'Cause there's a heart that's falling apart, and tear-filled eyes are looking back at me. God, won't you help me to see? It's the prayer in an empty room, little things we do when nobody's around. A hand reaching out to a heart in doubt. It's the smallest spark that can light the dark. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. A million little drops of rain can be enough to cause a tidal wave, a flood of your love that no one can contain. 'Cause there's an empty soul that wants to be known around me now that I can lead to you, revealing love that won't refuse. 'Cause it's the prayer in an empty room, little things we do when nobody's around. A hand reaching out to a heart in doubt. It's the smallest spark that can light the dark. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. It's the kind words, a simple smile, more than showing up, going the extra mile. It's giving everything when you got nothing left, sharing a little hope with a single breath. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. It's the prayer in an empty room. A hand reaching out to a heart in doubt. It's the prayer in an empty room. Little things we do when nobody's around. A hand reaching out to a heart in doubt. It's the smallest spark that can light the dark. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the world. That's how you change the
You'll have to move this up when you come. I am delighted, and it is a great privilege to introduce my friend, Josh Scott, who's with us today. When Josh called me and offered to preach today, I jumped at the chance. First of all, because it's Super Bowl Sunday, and I have to confess, I used to pray for snow on Super Bowl Sunday. So yeah, absolutely you can preach on Super Bowl Sunday, but also because he's a dear friend of mine, and gives us an opportunity to reconnect a little bit. But he's a rare kind of friend. It was unlikely that we would have ever become friends organically. Didn't go to school together, didn't work together. We weren't in a club or organization where we would have happened to bump into each other. Now, we were both pastors, so we had that in common, but we were 40 miles away. You were in Morgantown, I was in Owensboro. And so there was, and we weren't members of the same organization, the same association or anything like that. So it was unlikely we would ever just bump into each other. No real reason for that to have happened. And Our friendship happened at a time when a lot of the people that I called friends, and some who had been friends with for years and years and years, mostly all of my life, in fact, were beginning to distance themselves from me. Our church had just been voted out of the association locally for welcoming PFLAG to meet in our building, if you can imagine such a horrible thing to do. We were kicked out, and people that I'd known my entire life were unfriending me, literally, not just on Facebook. But Josh reached out to me. He took the initiative, asked if we could get together and just talk. Probably thought I needed a friend, and you weren't wrong. We continued to meet up every month or so, every time deepening our friendship even more. We bonded over our mutual support for LGBTQ folks and our love for Brian McLaren. And since Josh has moved to Nashville to pastor Grace Point Church there, began writing books and became famous. So I was really glad that you didn't cast me away as a friend, even though you've become this highfalutin guy now. His most recent book is called Parables, Putting Jesus' Stories in Their Place, and he'll be preaching on the parable of the mustard seed today. Josh, we're delighted to have you. I'm thrilled that you're with us today. Thank you for being my friend, for befriending me, reaching out to me, and continuing to be my friend even today. Thank you for preaching for us today. Come share your word.
Let's do this. Well, I've got to say, first of all, it's a delight to be here with those of you in the room, those of you online. Bob, you made that sound a little more altruistic than it was on my part. I was drowning because I was leading a church in Morgantown, Kentucky, on this journey to become affirming, inclusive, and we were talking about progressive ideas, and that was a hard time. We were hemorrhaging people, and yet I knew we were doing the right thing, and so I literally did an internet search. I remember this. I did an internet search for affirming progressive churches near me, and Bob, your church popped up, and I immediately sent an email. I thought, I don't know anybody's going to respond to me, but we'll just see what happens. And so this friendship, when I really do believe that we stand on the shoulders of giants, you know, the folks who have been in this work. And you were one of those people for me. You were pioneering when not a lot of people that I know or around here were ever thinking about pioneering. So I'm grateful for you and your ministry, and what a gift you've been to me. So when I was a kid, my dad would do this thing that annoyed me, and I'm sure I let out an audible groan every time. At least it was happening inside. He would do this thing where when I was trying to make a decision, I was struggling with something, I was trying to figure out what to do, or if I'd done something a little bit boneheaded that I shouldn't have done, and he wanted to explain to me the potential consequences of that action, he would say to me in conversation, "Let me give you a for instance." And I knew that I was locked in for at least an hour. And I knew that I could not roll my eyes enough. I could not, just hoping and like, something's got to get me out of this. But he would do it all the time. Well, let me give you, for instance, let's say you're going down the road and yada, 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 yada. Just suffered through the for instance. And I'd forgotten about that. I'd forgotten. My dad hasn't given me a for instance in a long, long time. But it came back up for me not too long ago. My oldest son is 16. He now has a driver's license. He's way smarter than I am. If you don't believe that, ask him and he'll tell you. And but a couple years ago, he was trying to make a decision about something, and I can't even remember for the life of me right now what it was. But I remembered he needs some fatherly wisdom here, and I'm going to provide it. And so I sat him down. I look him in the eyes and I said, son, let me give you a for instance. He groaned and I groaned. What have I become? What's happened to me? I've become my own father. You know, Jesus did that a lot, actually. His parables are for instances. When Jesus wants to explain, and usually his parables are about this thing called the kingdom of God, which is kind of a dated kingdom. We're not walking around in armor riding horses with javelins anymore. So what does the kingdom mean? Think about it like this. Jesus is saying, here's what God's dream for the world would look like. If God's will could actually be done on earth, if we would allow that to be possible, this is what it would look like. And so Jesus told stories, parables about the kingdom of God. And we know a lot of these stories. We're pretty familiar with them. The philosopher Dallas Willard once wrote that familiarity breeds unfamiliarity, which means you can know something so well. You can know it like the back of your hand. You can be so, on top of it that when you take a step back and zoom out, something might surprise you. And so what I want to invite us to do is I want to share a story with you today that Jesus told called the parable of the mustard seed. But I want to ask and I know it's really hard, but let's pretend we've not heard this story before. Because what happened for me when I sat down to write this chapter in my recent book is I thought I knew what the chapter was going to be about. But often one of the reasons I write is to figure out what I think. I don't know if that's true for any of you, but when I don't know what I think, I'll usually start writing about it, and that's where I sort of find it along the way. But I'm sitting down and I'm dealing with this story, and I noticed that this story pops up 3 different times. It's one of those rare things that pop up in all 3 of what they call the synoptic gospels, and they call them synoptic because they're so similar. You can see them together, but Mark, Matthew, and Luke. This story pops up in all 3 of them. And what I began to notice is that if you read them in the order they were written, which would be Mark, Matthew, and Luke, what you notice is there's some subtle changes in the parable between each author that changes, I think, the meaning of the parable. And so what I'd like to do today in the next 2 or 3 hours, we're going to deep dive this, and I'm kidding, we'll get you home in time for the Super Bowl. I want you to see this, though. It really changed my relationship to this story, and it sort of brought about, for me, this cautionary tale, or this warning about what can happen with the church and with the movement of Jesus if we're not careful. So I want to begin in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 4. This was the first version of this story to be written down, Mark chapter 4. And in this story, Mark chapter 4 is a chapter where Jesus is each of these Gospels has a chapter where Jesus is telling stories. Now, I don't think that's because Jesus told all of the stories in one fell swoop, and that's the only. I think he told these stories a lot. He probably changed them over time. They were, when sometimes you give the same sermon, you'll know this, Bob. If you give the same sermon to different groups of people based on their response, things happen. When I've preached in churches where you have more than one service, the sermon, 9 is different than the sermon at 10:30 or a little bit or whatever. And so but these changes we're going to see, I don't think are necessarily changes from Jesus. I think they're changes that the authors make, and it's really interesting. So Mark, to give you a little deep context, Mark is writing this story sometime around the year 70, in the aftermath of the Romans destroying Jerusalem and the Temple of Jerusalem after the Jewish revolt. And here's what Mark says, in the words of Jesus. Jesus also said, "What can we compare the kingdom of God, or what parable will we use for it? It is like a mustard seed, which when sown upon the ground is the smallest of all the seeds on earth." He actually got that. Don't tell anybody. That's not true. Listen, he majored in theology, not botany, so let's give him a break on this one. It's not the smallest of the seeds on earth. Yet when it is sown, it becomes the greatest of all shrubs and puts forth large branches so that the birds can make nests in its shade. Now, it's really important. I want you to try to lock in a couple details about this particular version of the parable so you can contrast it with what comes later. The seed in this story is just sown on the ground, right? I don't know if you ever watched Oprah, but do you remember if you did the Oprah's Favorite Things episode where she just gave everybody everything? I like to imagine a farmer going out going, you get some seed and you get some seed. It's not intentional. It's not necessarily boundaried. It's just sort of scattered everywhere. And eventually it grows and becomes this shrub. Now, if you know anything about a mustard plant, these things can be invasive. Once it takes root, it can just grow wild and uncontrollable. It can be a real nuisance. Now, I love mustard. I think it's the premier condiment. I don't know what people who eat mayonnaise are thinking. Mustard is the best. But if you don't want it everywhere, then you got to be really careful how you sow it. And this sower of seed is just scattering it. Second, it becomes a great shrub. So we go from a wildly scattered seed to a shrub where the birds make nests. Okay, you got those in? Locked in? Okay, Matthew chapter 13. This is the second version of the parable, written about a decade or so after Mark wrote. That's what Matthew says. Jesus put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in his field. It is the smallest of all the seeds, but when it has grown, it is the greatest of shrubs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air can come make nests in its branches. Did you catch the changes there? Where is the seed sown in this version? Not just sort of everywhere. It's in a field, like, I don't know, where you expect seed to be sown. And growing up, living around, or at least in the last 20 years in Morgantown, there are fields everywhere. Living in Morgantown, Butler County for almost 15, 16 years, there are fields everywhere, and you know whose field that is, right? There are boundaries to fields. This person owns up to here, and then somebody else owns on over. So somebody sows this in a field, and then what does the seed sown in the field become? It starts out as a shrub, but it morphs into a tree, and the birds make nests in the branches. Now the last version, this is in Luke 13. And what's interesting about this, by the way, is scholarship would universally agree that Matthew knew Mark. Matthew actually took 90% of Mark's gospel. This is before copyright law. He took 90% of Mark's gospel and incorporated it in his own gospel with some changes. Now, there's debate about, I think Luke actually knew Matthew as well. And so Luke is going to make some further changes. Jesus said, therefore, what is the kingdom of God like, and to what should I compare it? It is like a mustard seed that someone took and sowed in the garden. It grew and became a tree, and birds of the air made nests in its branches. Do you notice the further changes? It's not just wildly scattered. It's not in a field. It is in a proper garden. And what does it become? A tree. It skips the shrub stage of Mark and Matthew and just becomes a tree. And so when I was digging into these parables, that just stood out to me. What is happening with this seed and this plant? Because in every gospel, it changes. There's an addition made or a tweak made or a deletion made. Something happens, and I think it matters. I think it might be significant. So what is the significance of all this? Well, first of all, I'll say when we read this parable, we tend to focus on the idea that it's the smallness of the seed and the largeness of what is produced, right? So, don't overlook small things. They can do great things. And I think that's an important point. I think it's a valid point. Jesus talks elsewhere about if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, be thrown into the sea, and it'll happen. So Jesus is saying it doesn't take a lot to do a lot. But I don't think that's primarily maybe not the point of this. Maybe it's the point of the story, but it's not primarily the point that stood out to me when I was like, what's up with these changes that we see happening? The changes between where it's sown, how it's sown, and what is produced. And especially that image of the birds and the branches, that stood out to me as well, because it's an image that pops up over and over in the Hebrew Bible, specifically in the prophets. And it always ends up, I did a little digging and found out this image of a massive tree with branches and the birds nesting in it always is associated as an image to be connected to power, kingship, and we would use the word today, empire. Power, kingship, authority, and empire. Let me give you an example. In Ezekiel 31, now this is written in a really difficult time for Israel. They're in exile. The people of Judah were in exile in Babylon. They were hanging their harps and sitting and weeping by the rivers of Babylon, wondering if they were ever going to get to go home again, wondering if they were ever going to be able to be back in their land worshiping their God again. And Ezekiel makes a pronouncement against the Egyptian Pharaoh. in this text. He calls the Pharaoh of Egypt a cedar of Lebanon with fair branches and forest shade and a great height, its top among the clouds. So when he wants to image a great leader, a powerful person, he says, oh, this powerful Pharaoh is like a cedar stretching into the sky. I bet you've seen these images in other places. It shows up in the book of Daniel and several other places in the Hebrew Scriptures. But listen to what he says about Pharaoh. Ezekiel 31:5-6. So it towered high, this tree towered high above all the trees of the field. Its boughs grew large and branches long from abundant water in its shoots. All the birds of the air made their nests in its boughs. Under its branches, all the animals of the field gave birth to their young, and in its shade, all great nations lived. This image of a tree with branches and birds and animals nesting is a metaphor, an image for the idea of empire. The Egyptian empire, sure, at the point where Ezekiel was the Babylonian empire, and from their captivity in Babylon, they longed to go back to their land. And do you know what image they used to describe what going home would look like? We want to get us one of those really big trees with branches for the birds. We want to get us one of those empires. We want to become strong and powerful. We want the rest of the world to quake in their boots at the mention of our name. And so here's what I think. I think the trajectory of this parable reveals something really troubling. It's a troubling path that the movement of Jesus has followed in the last 1,700 to 2,000 years. Because in Mark, when Jesus tells the story, this seed is just scattered haphazardly and wild, and what's produced is a shrub. It's invasive, it's annoying. You don't know how to get rid of it. It just keeps growing and growing. Where I come from, that would be kudzu. I don't know if y'all have had any experience with kudzu. That stuff, once it gets going, it ain't gonna stop, right? You cannot get rid of it. When Jesus imaged his movement, he did not say in the earliest layer of this tradition, it's a big, powerful tree. You know what he's going for? Annoying. What's my movement up to in the world? We're annoying all the right kinds of people. What's my movement up to in the world? Oh, they're going to try to stamp it out and kill it, but we're just going to keep growing because this thing is wild. And it shows up in places you wouldn't imagine. Right? Imagine in Jesus' original story in Mark, he's scattering mustard seed on the side of the road, in somebody's front yard, somebody's backyard, in the little section where the light pole is at the grocery store that has a little grass. Suddenly you've got mustard. Jesus imagines his movement as sort of this punk rock underground thing that's going to spread and pop up in all sorts of places and be up to all kinds of good troublemaking in the world. And you get to Matthew, and Matthew says, yeah, let's start out that way, but at some point we've got to get proper. So don't just scatter the seed anywhere, because that could get too annoying and bring in the wrong kind of attention. Let's scatter it. Let's do it in a field. That's where it belongs. And maybe once it grows, maybe it can become something else. I mean, Matthew's kind of describing the American dream, right? You pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, and then you become something incredible. It's almost like what Matthew's saying is, yes, we can start out wild and a movement, but eventually we've got to become official, and we've got to become proper, and we've got to become boundaried, and we've got to think about a Beverly Hillbillies situation. That's what I think Matthew has in mind here, right? We're gonna start out just in the backwoods, but eventually we're gonna have a cement pond in the middle of Hollywood. Like, that's where we're headed. And you come to Luke, he gives up all pretense. Luke doesn't say anything about a shrub. He's like, look, we're putting this thing in a garden, and it's gonna be up and to the right. We are going to be like the empires of the world. Do you see the changes there? And do you see how that can create a different vision? Because the movement of Jesus was not a movement of empire. It was a movement to resist empire. Think about the things Jesus did that were so deeply subversive and counterintuitive. Jesus threw meals where everyone was invited to the table. Not just powerful men of the same status, but everyone was invited to the table. Women were not up serving food, they were eating food with everybody else. The enslaved were not, being forced to wait tables, they were being waited on, given human dignity that they deserved because they're made in God's image. Jesus was de-hierarchicalizing It's a hard word. The world. That's the opposite of empire. Empire wants to make known at every turn who's on top and who's at the bottom. It wants to make known who's an insider and who's an outsider, who belongs and who doesn't, who is valued and who doesn't. Just, if you don't believe that, watch the news right now. At every turn in the United States of America, the regime in charge is trying to tell us who matters and who doesn't. They're trying to tell us who belongs and who doesn't. That is always the playbook of empire. Has been 5,000 years ago, and if we don't do something about it, it will be 5,000 years in the future. So I think maybe the challenge for us, specifically American Christians, in this parable, is not just about small things bringing unexpected growth. Yes, that meaning's in there. Maybe the challenge is that we're being asked to decide what kind of movement we're going to be. What is the church going to be? Are we going to be a movement of shrubs, annoyingly, secretively spreading through the world, fomenting goodness and good trouble all over the place? Or are we going to try to be a proper 501c3 organization that looks really good and slick but has lost the substance of Jesus' message? Will we be part of the wild movement of Jesus that challenges empire, or will we sell out to gain the benefits of empire? Friends, that we're witnessing this unfold in the last decade in this country, in some ways in the way it unfolded in Germany in the 1930s and 40s. We are watching Christian leaders and churches sign up and sign on for some really terrible things because they believe it will benefit their bottom line. Church history tells us that far too often we have chosen the domestication of empire over the wildness of Jesus' movement. We have chosen the crucifiers over the crucified. We have chosen to sell our birthright for a mess of pottage. Specifically in this moment, we face the danger and threat of Christian nationalism. It is a stranglehold on large swaths of Christianity in America. We do. And it's not a new problem. I can remember being a teenager in church, in a little Baptist church I went to in Eastern Kentucky, and I can remember on certain days us singing the Star-Spangled Banner, and I remember thinking, what does this have to do with worshiping God? What I didn't know at the time is our God was so conflated with our empire that we could not separate the two without destroying one or the other. Christians have supported morally bankrupt leaders. We have baptized destructive policies that harm the very people Jesus told us we would find him among: the poor, the prisoner, the immigrant, and the oppressed. Christians have made excuses just in recent weeks for the murder of 2 American citizens on the streets of Minneapolis. We have defended, in just the last few days, Christians have defended 47's racism and ignored the cries of victims of abuse, saying we just need to move past it. Because when suddenly you have a vested interest in the empire, then you are beholden to it. And the large swaths of American Christians in their churches are beholden to empire right now. So what do we do? Like the thing I've been thinking of, because, there are certain benefits, right? Being a 501c3 is not a bad thing. It helps you out. But what do we do? How do we exist in this moment as a church? If we want to be on the right side of history, and if we want to be the kind of movement Jesus envisioned, which was not this massive, powerful tree, but this wild, invasive shrub. I'll say a few things. First, I think we need communities that are grounded in love, compassion, and justice, and resist the toxicity of the status quo in this moment. The encouraging thing to me about the moment we're living in is that in the last few months even, I've seen friends I've had, well, I don't know if they would still call me their friend, like a similar experience to yours, Bob. But people I knew in a previous life who have suddenly started waking up and naming what we're seeing happen around us. That to me is so encouraging. At some point we have to be able to name it. What we're experiencing in our country is not normal, and it is not okay. And no amount of power, wealth, and benefit is worth the actual human lives that are being destroyed, the families that are being torn apart, the lives that are being lost, the people who are being made afraid. We must develop communities grounded in love, compassion, and willing to stand for justice, which means that there are times, and here's just the truth, when you stand up for the right thing, that usually comes with a price tag. It usually comes with a price tag. I'll say this, back in 2015 at our church in Morgantown, which wasn't very big, we had a couple hundred people, but I remember after 47 or 40, he wasn't 40 anything at that point, announced that he was going to run for president, and he came down that staircase and he gave that terrible racist speech about Hispanic people. I remember watching that thinking, okay, and the community I was in was very, very, very conservative, very red. But I just remember thinking, okay, this is an obvious no-brainer. We can all agree. And I remember like a Sunday after that, I just stood up and said, look, I don't tell you how to vote. I will not tell you how to vote. I will not tell you what candidate to pick. Can we just all agree that this guy's a complete disaster? And it turns out we could not agree that this guy, we lost more people over my statement on Trump and his unfitness than we did when we became inclusive, than we did when we rethought atonement theory, than we did when we made any sort of doctrinal shift around anything else. It was that decision that caused, and I've just found, like you found, Bob, that these sorts of decisions, standing up and speaking the truth, will come with a price tag. It strikes me as odd that our guy, Jesus, said to us, if you want to follow me, pick up your cross and let's go. And we have created a Christian movement that is designed to keep us away from crosses. Or we have misunderstood him, and Christians have tried to put other people on crosses for 2,000 years. When really our call has been to get up on our own crosses and die for the things that actually matter, whether it's the death of a reputation, whether it's a financial, or whatever it costs. We are in a moment where silence is complicity. And I think the danger of this shifting parable is that it reflects an early trajectory in the Christian movement to want the glitter and the glitz and the glamour of empire, the benefit, the wealth, the protection. How did Christianity get so intertwined with the Roman Empire? After after a time of intense persecution, the Romans decided, well, we can't, they're like a mustard plant. Every time we think we've eradicated them, new pockets pop up. What can we do to get rid of this group? Oh, let's do this. Let's stop trying to kill them and let's co-opt them. Instead of persecuting them, let's build them some buildings. Instead of persecuting, let's give them the emperor's ear to talk about their agenda and what they would like to see happen in the empire. And God bless them, I can look back on that and think, after a period of intense persecution, why would you not want a break? But I think that decision 1,700 years ago to merge the Christian movement with the Roman Empire, we are still dealing with the fallout, and it's what we're looking at in this country right now. Christian nationalism has roots that are 1,700 years old. And we are dealing with the aftermath in this moment. And I do think we need the people who have the courage and conviction that our smallness does not determine our impact. Our smallness does not determine our impact. I think we can look at the state of the world and be so overwhelmed. I don't know if you ever feel this way, but I turn on the news for like 2 seconds and I am so overwhelmed with all the fires to put out that have you seen that meme that goes around where it has a dog sitting at this bar and there's flames all behind the dog and the dog just goes, this is fine, right? Have you seen this? Like, sometimes it feels like, oh my, there's so much going on. And I see this desire among people to just sort of like, well, this doesn't affect me directly, so I'm just going to stay in my lane, and I'm going to keep my head down, and I'm not going to cause any trouble for myself. I'm just going to ignore this is somebody else's problem. You realize, though, eventually somebody else's problem, once they're out of the way, and the next group's out of the way, and the next group's out of the way, eventually it's your problem. And the reality is we are so connected in this world that something happening all the way across the world can have deep and significant impact on our own lives. We must understand our interdependence on this planet. I remember that every time I fly on a nice airplane, which is very rare. I usually fly on, the cheapest possible airline that you can get a seat on. It's like the wing is duct taped on, and you just sort of. It's a great prayer life boost, to be on those planes. But sometimes if somebody's like, hey, we're gonna fly you out on this airline, and it's one of those deals where they have a first class and economy and coach and all of that. I've never flown in first class. Anybody in here? Have you ever flown in first class? Never flown in first class. It always cracks me up, though, when you board the plane and the people in first class are already there and they have their champagne and their hot towel, and you walk by them and they just sort of look at you with disdain, like you're riffraff and beneath them. You know that look, right? If you've ever walked past first class on a plane where they're sipping their champagne, they're like, oh, these people. And then you go back and sit down and they start explaining what's going to happen. If in the event there's a depressurization, the oxygen masks will fall, and here's where the flotation device is, and here are all the safety things. And if you're sitting in the emergency row, you have to lead the charge to safety. Like anybody's really probably going to do that. And then they do something really interesting. Okay, we're going to take off. And they close this little curtain that separates the first class from the low class. And that curtain is always a little bit mesh, at least in parts. And I'm like, we can see up there. We can see what they're getting and what we're not getting. We can see it all. But the thing that always shocks me about that is we've created such this sense of us and them. There's a separation between us. But if this plane goes down, the people in first class have the same problems as the people in coach. Because the ground is still coming at both of them at a high rate of speed. This idea that we are distinct and separate from one another is just a farce. And it leads us to organize ourselves and to live our lives in self-protective ways that we don't realize that one of the most self-protective thing we can do is love our neighbor and seek to love our enemy. I remember several years ago I went to D.C. with the One Campaign. They're an organization that works specifically to eradicate disease and poverty in sub-Saharan Africa. This is 2017. Trump had just taken office for his first term, and they asked some of us pastors and other folks to come to D.C. to lobby because they were trying to pass some things that were now going to be very difficult in this Republican-controlled Congress. And so we're going and we're going to meet with representatives from, I was with people from Kentucky, so we're trying to meet all the, McConnell's reps and Rand Paul's reps and Brett Guthrie's reps and all the reps. And the day before we got there, I think it was the Secretary of Defense, I can't remember who it was at the time, but maybe it was the Secretary of Defense. He was speaking to Congress about funding our State Department, which has 1% of that budget, less than 1% of that budget goes to programs of uplift in the developing world. And one of the things he said to them I found so interesting, and we used it like crazy the next day. He said, if you're not going to fund the State Department, you have to buy more bullets. And the point was, if we aren't going to go out and try to help the problems of the world, then the problems of the world are going to find us, and we're going to have to fight. And so we went to every representative and said, taking care of our neighbors in the world is the best thing we can do for national security. And we have just bought this myth that if we just hunker down and go in our bunkers, we'll be safe from everything and everyone. And the truth is, it is only when we create communities of love and justice where people have enough, where everyone has a seat at the table, that's when we actually have peace and safety. The chant we often will say during protests, no justice, no peace. Friends, that's not a threat, that's an acknowledgement of reality. In the absence of peace, in the absence of justice, we'll also experience always the absence of peace. And no matter how big or small we are as individuals and as communities, if we come together, the Grand Canyon was formed by little drops of water over a period of time. And now people call that grand and spend their vacation money to go stare into it because it made such a big impact. It just takes one or two to begin a movement. The avalanche begins, the snowball down the hill begins with a couple of people saying, I believe a better world is possible and I'm willing to speak up for it. And this is the last part. I think we need a commitment to keep our shrubness and reject the temptation to pursue treeness. And here's what I mean. It can be really tempting to look at all the, think about like a massive megachurch. And you go into their really gorgeous, huge, our church meets at a school, so I have building envy a lot, like just having a place you don't have to set up every week. But when you go into those spaces, you think, that's so cool. And they have a fog machine. They have lights that Bridgestone Arena wishes they had, right? The trappings of all the wealth that can create, that can be a real temptation. I also know people in that world who have said a word about what's going on in our country because they're afraid it's going to affect their bottom line. I know people in that world who believe in their core that God's LGBTQ plus children should be celebrated and affirmed, and that the church has done far, far, far too much damage to this community. And every week they get up and they take their stage and they give some sort of milquetoast sermon about some sort of self-help thing, and they never address the massive elephant in the room, which is they are not living in a congruent spiritual reality in life. They're allowing a group of people to be harmed to protect their paycheck. Friends, there is no amount of massive, powerful treeness that is worth that impact on human lives. And if our movements, if our churches feel a little shrub-like maybe we're not for everyone, or maybe we're not as polished, or maybe we're not as massive, and maybe our budgets aren't as big, and maybe that's okay. Because maybe our mission all along has never been to pursue all that. Maybe our mission all along has been to be faithful right where we are and to sign ourselves up to be the annoying, countercultural, wild, invasive, frustrating to systems of oppression and power movement that Jesus founded with his own life and death. And that work is not easy. But I will say this, being able to sit down, if I ever have grandkids, being able to sit down with them one day and say, when this whole thing was burning down, I was a part of a group of people who sounded the alarm and who not only pointed out the problems, but worked to make the world better. How? Well, you're taking Valentine's to nursing home. And we live in a world of such darkness and difficulty that any amount of light is desperately needed. You're loving one another. You're welcoming people into your community. This is a beautiful, this right here, what you're doing, is countercultural. It is resistance. And it is what the world needs more and more and more of. So thank you for being you. Thank you for being a community that stands for justice and compassion and peacemaking and goodness in the world. I wish there were a million more, because the challenge in front of us is great, but the parable of the mustard seed does seem to insist that if you get enough stubborn people together who just refuse to give up and go away, anything is possible. Are you with me? Amen.
Thank you, Josh, for those excellent words. Reminder that our smallness does not mean insignificance. Thank you. We normally have a time to reply, raise questions, make observations, and so I want to open it up for you. This is your turn to speak. If you've got a question, we'll make sure that Josh answers it all. He's got all the answers. Now, let's talk. Reminder, if you are on site, if you wave a hand, we'll get a microphone to you. If you're on Zoom, you can unmute and speak. And if you're on the app, put something in the chat, and Chrissy or Gator will read it.
Josh, I just wanted to thank you for that. I also had gone to one of those mega church things and thought, no, this isn't for me. And I did the same thing. I researched all-inclusive churches near me, and that's how I found Unity and decided to come here. This was for me. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Paula.
Josh, I loved it. I love your stories. It was engaging. It was also challenging. I appreciated that about it. And you know, I think you have a gift in the ability to not demand people come to church to be transformative. And I think that's powerful in this day and age, especially for younger people. How can I make a difference in love without having to sit in a pew every Sunday? And I really enjoyed it. So thank you again. I look forward to you coming back and visiting.
Thank you, Chief. If you got a really hard question, this is a good time for it. Hunter.
I really enjoyed the sermon, and it's really made me think of like why would you actually want to be an empire, you know, because empires never last. None of the empires in the Bible last, you know, the Roman Empire, and then the Spanish, the British, the Chinese, and eventually the American Empire. They all went away, but you know, weeds have always been here. Weeds been around a lot longer than empire, and I think they're going to be around a lot longer than any empire that ever exists.
Weeds endure. Anyone else?
Teresa writes, thank you, Josh, for your powerful sermon and the reminder to be compassionate and mindful, even if a lot of people don't agree with you.
Thank you, Teresa.
I just wanted to say thank you. And there's times that I wonder, now that I'm older, what in the name of heaven could I do? But it does come to you. The things do show things to you in life that you can help, but it's kind of scary at times. It's kind of, I don't think I can make a difference. And you have to remember, if you don't speak up, no one will hear you, and that's one part that they're missing, you know. Absolutely. Every little bit helps.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
I'm not going to let Josh go without asking a more difficult question. Josh, do you think, and you can disagree or agree, that the modern church has so pacified Jesus that to resist for any of us feels unchristian?
Oh, absolutely. And I was actually this morning on a call with our founding pastor at Grace Point. He's preaching for me today, Stan Mitchell, and brought up that one of the defenses that people use when something awful and horrible happens, like the video Trump shared this week, that one of the things they do is they use the Bible. And they say, well, Romans 13 says, do not resist the government, essentially. The government is God's instrument. And I think there are a couple issues with that. One is, if you take those 7 verses out, Romans 12 and 13 flow really well, so it seems like that's added later, probably as the church was pacified toward the empire. But then, if Paul said that, then he and Jesus both violated it, because they both got killed by the state for resisting the state. So yeah, I think we have baptized Jesus in Americanism. We have wrapped him in a flag. And we have essentially said that Jesus was the greatest American who's ever lived. And his message has lost its teeth. In the book on parables, one of the things I do is I show that some of the ways we've read these parables to make them about going to heaven when you die ignores the context and softens the challenge. And so I think we do that significantly. I often will say, if some of the people who actually knew Jesus as a historical person, if Simon Peter came in average church and listened to a sermon, I think he would probably go, who are they talking about? who's that guy? Why is he wearing a beauty pageant sash? He seems way too willing to be on the wrong side of, you know. Yeah, I think we've definitely done that with Jesus, unfortunately.
Thank you for the response.
Anyone else?
Michael Noon writes, my experience online and social media has been endless debates between Protestant, Catholic, and other denominations who mainly agree on being exclusive and discriminatory. It's a very demoralizing space.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael.
It wasn't by accident that Jesus said, take up a cross.
And I don't think it was happenstance that Josh came this Sunday. It's the mystery of God is incredible. We
Yeah.
needed to hear this.
Very timely.
You got it.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being with us today, wherever you are, and those of you who will be joining us on Thursday night or next week or next month. Thank you for your participation, for your attention. Thank you, my dear friend Josh, for being with us today, bringing powerful words. Thank you so much. God bless you all.